For the last 4 sessions, today is the 5th one, I've been discussing some value described in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. These are called as jnana, jnanam. This knowledge is not the self or Atman, because once you gain that knowledge, which we will, which is both the means and the end of the Vedantic teachings. However, these values, when clearly understood, fully assimilated, and regularly practiced in daily life, the individual does indeed get ready to receive that unique wisdom of Atma-Jnana and then fulfill the ultimate potential of this human birth, which comes about only through divine grace. Actually, we decided to dwell on this topic because I just wanted to cover as much as possible of the 73 important verses which have been described as Amrita Dhara, that means continuous flow of nectar, or Dharmyamritam, as other commentators call, which consists of 19 verses of the chapter 12, all the 34 verses of this chapter 13, and the first 20 verses of chapter 14. Because in reality, all these 73 verses were continuous wisdom passed on by Shri Krishna to Arjuna. As I mentioned, the first verse of the 14th chapter was an add-on, well after commentaries from Shankaracharya. If you look at it, every Upanishad, that's only about the same ultimate formula. His mathematical formula is Atman is equal to Brahman. Tat Tvamasi. You are nothing but that. And what we did in the first 6 chapters, when we studied it, first 6 chapters were predominantly emphasizing the description of Tvam, Jivatma. The next 6 chapters, from 7 through 12, Shri Krishna taught us about the Tatvakyam, talking about Brahman, including his glories and vibhutis, and the Vishwarupa Darshan, and all other important qualities. But these are the critical values that Sauti added to complete the Gita, where it made a difference, where he closed the loop between Tat, Tvam, Asi. So this is really the beginning of the Asi factor, because we learned about Brahman, we learned a little bit about what the qualities of Atman were in the first 6 chapters, but we didn't get a complete understanding as to how they connect with each other most effective. I can give several references from different Upanishads, but there is several places where there is a advice given by the teacher to the student, called Upadesha Vakya, Tattvamasi, Chandogya Upanishad talks about beautifully. Several places you see a definition of Brahman is given in a Prajnanam Brahma. But the really important thing is Anubhava Vakya. We'll discuss this in much greater detail towards the end of our year's discussion. But basically, when the teacher is satisfied with the understanding of the student, and not simply a theoretical knowledge, a book understanding, but he or she, the teacher can be both, is able to observe that the student or the disciple has put those assimilated values into his day-to-day activities. Then the teacher is truly pleased with the progress of the student. And that's when the Guru Kripa comes. And since this Guru Kripa is a Guru Kripa which able to flow the Deva Kripa as well, because as we discussed last time, we need a living teacher to pass on that knowledge to you, because he's like a living coach. He or she is able to identify your strengths and weaknesses and advance them to bring them to full complete fruition. So it's starting with Sadashiva Samarambha, starting from God, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, in between, who rejuvenated Hinduism in 8th century, Asmat Acharya Paryantam, Vande Guru Parampara. So basically, all are traditional enlightened teachers, and has come to my enlightened teacher. And when that teacher is satisfied with your progress, your performance, your understandings, and putting into day-to-day activities, then he basically is able to pass on that Guru Kripa and Deva Kripa. Then the student is able to experience it. So when next time he or she go into deep meditating stage of samadhi, that individual is able to experience it as to who indeed he is. And that's called Anubhava Vakya. And that's where exactly he screams as in Brodharanya Upanishad, Yajnavalkya talking about, Ayam Atma Brahma. Yes, I feel it. So when the teacher taught us that you cannot comprehend, you cannot objectify the Brahman by mind, he was absolutely correct. But only when you have advanced enough in understanding of this subject matter, then you can recognize, you can appreciate the experience of Brahman by your mind. So what I'm trying to say is, when the teacher tells you something, listen to each of the word very carefully, because there is immense meaning to it, and superficial listening to it, reflecting on it, creates confusion. And then in that process of understanding of Brahman, and remember, even devas are not able to achieve this level of enlightenment. They have to come back to human birth in order to reach that particular level. And ultimately is when you lead your life with that full understanding and day-to-day practices, that person is Jivan Mukta, Akruta Krutya. So he is not influenced by the experiences in day-to-day life. He is content with everything. And the death does not bother, because that person has succeeded in achieving the stage of moksha, and he knows what death is, and moksha is liberation from death itself. What have you studied so far? We have just concluded only one verse in the last 3 prior discussions. And this is, we started with amanitvam, understanding that one must have an absence of self-conceit. One can be proud of one's accomplishments, but that feeling should be coupled with a sense of humility. Because our success, as you see it, is not our own success alone. So many people along the way have allowed us to reach that level of understanding. So the success belongs to everybody on the team who allowed you to reach that particular level. And last but not the least, as we talked about formula of success, the ultimate helper is God. And God is the one who's helping through all the people who help along the way. But ultimately, it is God's grace that allows you to succeed. Then we also studied Adambitvam. Adambitvam is pretentiousness. That means asking for respect of accomplishment, which are even earned or accomplished by the individual. So we call it Dambhi. Declaring one's glories that one does not have, this is totally being a fraud. And many of the gurus that come these days sometimes tend to show that with their saffron aprons. We spent a great deal of time on learning about ahimsa, but we sometimes forget that violence is not simply physical, kaik, but it's also vachik, and manasik. So it's very something important that we must remember, that we have to be careful when we speak with other people, because many times I found myself that one gets hurt more by the words or mean words knowingly or unknowingly used by the person. And that to me is even more severe violence than the physical violence itself. And last but not the least, even thinking bad about somebody else is a violence itself, something that we must remember to not even think about worse or nothing. Sure, I understand that somebody may have done inappropriate things, but what should be the appropriate reaction or punishment, if you want to call it, that is not in my hand. That's in the hand of God Almighty. So we have to drop it as it is. So don't even think about thinking about anybody else in a negative way. So hurting somebody by physical actions, through words, or through even the thoughts is important. And we emphasize, of course, that all these things are universal values and need to be modified based upon desha, kala, paristhiti, location we are in, the laws of the land, the times that we live in, a situation that is confronted, like a violence for performing a essential surgery is not a violence, or a violence, but it need to be done to save somebody's life. Or even fighting the righteous war, like Mahabharat war, the death was inevitable, Shri Krishna said, but this had to be fought to maintain the righteousness in the society. So it has to be modified based upon Desha, Kala, Prasith. We spend a lot of time learning about Kshanti. And as you know, Kshanti is an attitude and Kshama is an act. It can be translated in English as patience, endurance, forbearance, forgiveness. But unfortunately, I don't like the word forgiveness because it implies often holier than thou attitude, which stems from pride. I am great, I'm forgiving you despite your inappropriate actions. Because in addition, Kshama or Kshanti are much more than simply forgiveness. The true attitude of Kshanti implies remaining serene, patient, observing self-restraint under all and every circumstances, treating everyone with love and compassion, and most importantly, even to those who may harm you. That's the one sometimes people don't quite get it, but till the time they read over and over again, they understand where the comments are coming from. Now, this value of Kshanti is accommodation, which is a beautiful human embellishment that takes in certain inner richness for a human being. It's one of the most important attitudes for a seeker who really wants to understand what Atman is, self, which accommodates the entire world, because you'll see where the commentary comes. It's describing this very Atman, which accommodates the entire world. Self accommodates ignorance, error, jealousy, passion, anger, greed, arrogance, and the world with all its limitations, all the frailties of human behavior and mind are accommodated. The accommodates pairs of opposites. And that's the reason in Kathopanishad, Yama describing teaching to Nachiketa, he comments self, Atman, as the greatest accommodator because it is unopposed to anything. And compassion comes because of the trait out of accommodation. And trust me, accommodation frees us from reaction, because when we react, we get painful agony. So it may not hurt as much the guy who has hurt you because he's not thinking in the rational way. But reaction to that hurts us much more. And that's very, very important. And to conclude this section, I would say that Shama means much more than forgiveness. It is a cheerful acceptance of situations and behaviors over which one has no control and which one cannot change. And if you master this value, you'll find it'll be helpful because it's fundamental to all relationships and the most essential for a happy and successful life. I had a great deal of problem myself in my earlier life, but over the last few years, I've been more comfortable with those situations, including starting with the temple being vandalized in 2006. Again, I want to emphasize that this unique quality, which is stressed by Lord Shri Krishna, is absolutely essential for one's spiritual progress. When this personality trait is coupled with non-violence, that individual certainly exhibits the saintly qualities. But I would urge you, request you to read this section over and over again from the notes because it is very important to inculcate that into our day-to-day activities. We also learned about arjavam, that means rectitude or straightforwardness, and spent a great deal of time about acharya upasanam, service to the guru, but at the same time emphasize that guru gets your car going. Acharyat padamadatte. One fourth of knowledge comes from the teacher who inspires you, gets you going, but one fourth comes from your hard work, reflection, meditations, referring to others' resources, and advancing. By meeting the way we do every Sunday as a group, sub brahmacharibhya, you get one fourth of knowledge by discussion amongst us who are similarly inclined to advance ourselves spiritually. And as we grow and live through our life, from life experiences, the remaining one fourth comes. So the teacher gets the car going, make sure you reach a certain level of speed, advancement, and then it's entirely up to us, spending time with good people, good friends with similar interests, and continue our studies. But again, when you are learning from the teacher, the Shri Krishna says that you have to learn it by pariprashnena sevaya. Sometimes, as I commented earlier about, you cannot objectify the Brahman by your mind, but that you can recognize and experience the Brahman by your mind. So it may sound confusing, outright nonsense to a student who are hearing for the first time. But when you don't understand it, ask the same question to the teacher in a respectful manner because he's jnani, he's enlightened. He understands where you're coming from because he had been there before when he was learning himself. So ask him in a gentle, respectful manner, and he would love to teach you. So pariprashtena seve. Because the relationship here with the teacher and the student is not a vad. Vad is between people with equal knowledge and understanding, with to and fro and learning from one another. That's what we do many times when you have satsang and discussing in the general fashion. Samvad is a relationship between the teacher and the student. So an individual accepts somebody as his or her teacher, and then when that teacher is making certain comments, the student does not understand it. He doesn't say that the teacher is talking nonsense, but the student says that it's my misunderstanding, my poor understanding that I'm confused. Could you kindly explain to me again because I didn't understand it? Not putting the blame on the teacher. So benefit of doubt is always given to the teacher, and the student takes the responsibility because that is really the truth. As a matter of fact, we commented that time that even the great individuals of their times always needed teachers. For example, Rama, incarnate of Lord Vishnu, seen in Vashishta to complete his knowledge as a human being. Krishna needed Sandipani to teach him. Narad, the celestial guru who traveled by frequent miles all over the cosmic creation here, he still needed to go to his brother who was smarter, Sanat Kumar. Bhrigu needed Varun, and Maitreyi was fortunate to have Yajnavalkya. So, and the last comment I made, maybe I don't know who was asking that question. We are not fully educated from a teacher, and we have a tendency to move like a butterfly from one teacher to another, which is perfectly fine, but only if the teacher tells you to do that. Because if you try to dig for water, try to get a well built up, creating 6 different holes in the ground is less likely to help you find the water. Stay with the same teacher if you feel comfortable. In the long run, you'll be surprised. you'll get the free water of knowledge overflowing from the source that you're trying to get the water out of. From. And finally, last week we talked about shaucham, and we talked about cleanliness, which is external, internal, and environmental. And external, of course, is body, clothes, equipment, the utensils you use for cooking, the house that we live in, car that we drive, most importantly, place of worship, keep it clean, and surroundings around your house. And sometimes we forget the cleanness of environment because outside of the house, we consider it's not ours. No. You not only keep the water, air, entire environment has to be clean, and not just only where we live. We look in Minnesota, it's clean air, but it has to be worked in such a way that the entire nation is free of pollution. And for that matter, the entire globe is clean of the cleanliness of the air is clear. I keep on reminding myself how often when we are walking through our home, we have a tendency to look at the mirror and adjust the hair, clean up the face. So we do look at the external aspect of us, visiting the mirror a few times. But how many times, or how much time actually, do we take time to reflect inwards to find out what our challenges are? And the challenges, as we have discussed in the past, and Prasanna has commented so beautifully in the past, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsaya, the excessive attachment, which often leads to addiction, uncontrolled anger, which can lead to different attitudes like selfishness, greed, jealousy, excessive wants, leading to lobha, delusion and moha, misinformation, poor judgment, how the things are important in value, arrogance, which pride comes out of wealth, power, beauty, physical strength, fame. All these things create arrogance. Possessiveness. Everything is all mine, not sharing with anybody. Even miserliness is an interesting quality. I don't know if I told you the story of Birbal and Akbar. You may remember this muhavar, jo boon se gayi to house se nahi aayegi. I don't know if you remember the story where a attar drop fell down on the ground as they are walking, and Akbar was holding that bottle. And he immediately bends down, following the 5-second rule, cleans that attar off and puts on his hand. And then Birbal was watching and he started laughing. So he made a next week, had a big party where he put the entire attar into a whole jacuzzi and wanted everybody to enjoy and have a good time. And of course, Birbal says, yeah. Jo boon se gayi, so house se nahi aaye. So basically, we try to be miserly about small little things and get big things walk away from us. Couple of things I want to comment, which I did not emphasize as much last time before getting to today's subject. And that is resentness. For example, somebody does inappropriate thing, and I know it happens, but the resentment that develops out of it, that develops in my mind. So resulting resentment makes ourself or mind a shauch. Leave aside that person who behaved inappropriately. So we let the resentment crowd make it mind dirty. So don't get worried about it. He'll meet his own appropriate reaction. You can always think about, as Prasanna was emphasizing, pratipaksha bhavana. Find something good about that person and let him go. Second thing is, we tend to be selfish sometimes, in the sense we don't think about somebody else's needs and wants before we try to jump onto the last piece in that particular cookie box. And perhaps the most important thing I want to reemphasize is self-condemnation. When we transgress the universal values like satya, ahimsa, dan, shaucha, when we make a mistake, we are our worst critics. So what you have to remember is not that you don't recognize those oversights and mistakes, but don't put ourselves that down. Accept the mistake, make sure you don't do that again, and move on. Because the worst critique, in my opinion, is nobody except ourselves. And last but not the least, the cleanliness of the speech. Speech should not cause any distress of agitation to other. Anudvega karam vakyam, satyam priyahitam chayat. So basically, you have to make certain that you speak truthful, satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat, na bruyat, satyam apriyam. Again, manaprasada saumyatva, mental cheerfulness, cheerful expression. And many times, the best way of communication is speaking nothing, is holding on to the hand of a person who is in pain. That itself is a perfect method of speaking with somebody else. And in addition to, we emphasize that we need to tackle with all these weaknesses through abhyas, satsanga, seva, and prarthana. That means just like we as a group get together in the morning and study together, keep the company of good people, satsanga. But unless and until you take some time out every day of your life to help somebody else who is in need, sometimes he or she may not ask for it, you have to see there is a need and go and help. And last but not the least, daily prayers. Doesn't matter what prayer one sings, not specific, but pick up any prayer which is favorite of yours, meaningful. It will be favorite of your family, favorite of a friend circle. But most importantly, when you sing the prayers, go with the full shraddha, knowing fully well that sing it on a regular basis to the bottom of your heart, focus of your mind, is going to make you a better human being. My favorite, of course, in addition to prayers, we normally sing the 12th chapter, is Gayatri Mantra singing 21 times. And I'm sure I've shared with you the detailed meaning of Gayatri Mantra. But when we come to the month, I think Mantra series, I think Arun had said the Gayatri Mantra before, but certainly remind him to send it again. I think Prasanna, myself, talked about 3 select names of Vishnu being Achyuta, Ananta, Govinda, because Govinda has so many different meanings. We briefly touch on Stairyam and Atmavanigra, and that brings us to today's discussion. For the first time after 4 sessions, we're going on to discuss the 8th verse, having completed the 7th verse in the first 4 sessions. It goes like this. Indriyartheshu vairagyam, anahankara evacha, janma mrityu jara vyadhi, dukkha dosha anudarshanam. Make a quick translation of this verse. Indriyartheshu vairagyam, dispassion with reference to sense objects. Anahankara evacha, indeed, absence of pride. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi, dukkha dosha anudarshanam. Seeing clearly the defects of the pain coming from birth, death, old age, and disease. So pain is going to be always there. Now, when you talk about vairagya, vairagya means coming out of 2 words, vi and raga. Vi is a negative prefix, joins the word raga. So that means dispassion towards the objects of attachment, sense organs, absence of any compelling drive for worldly pleasures and possession. Now here, raga means much more than fancy or preference. Raga means craving, real wanting really badly. That's attached raga, praga. And V means absence of compelling drive for worldly pleasures and possession. Indriyartheshu, vairagya. Now, many times what we do this is because we are unhappy, we feel ourselves uncomfortable with who we are, what we are, how we look. We feel unfulfilled. We feel ourselves inadequate. We have a certain sense of insecurity. So we try to overcome those limitations in our mind by pursuing such activities which tend to get pleasure out of it. And trying to get that, we think we'll be able to fill in the gaps in ourselves to become complete. So trying to get the pleasures, after a certain time, we come to recognize that they don't fulfill me. I don't feel fulfilled. I don't feel adequate. I'm still insecure. We tend to pursue the method of artha, go after wealth, power, influence, fame, name, gadam bindyat, patam chindyat, kuryat, rasabarodam. One way or the other, prasiddho, purusho bhavet. So try to become famous one way or the other. But soon one comes to realize that that is not getting you too far either. So vairagya is a state of mind which is brought about by understanding the futility of this sense activities, going after material things in the form of sensual objects, as well as wealthy objects, artha things. That's a state of mind that with knowledge, the wisdom which is developed after having pursued those paths, when realizes that you have not been able to fulfill your desires to be complete by that. Now, this is not a state of mind compelled by commitment for self-denial or deprivation. It's not something because I have to do it because somebody has told me to do that or deprive myself of this. It's because you have realized, no, I've tried it, try to find out if it gives me full satisfaction or not. And then you walk away from it with the full understanding that that's not completing me. I need something more. Indriyartheshu vairagyam. The second word there was anahankara. That means absence of the sense of ahankara. No, absence. Ahankara. Freedom of sense of I or sense of mine. That means freedom from an individual I identification. Total destruction of ahankara is going towards self-knowledge. Only those individuals who know the truth about self, what Atman is completely free from ahankara. Because he or she knows who the real doer is. When we recognize that the doer and enjoyer, bhokta and karta, is nothing but Brahman. Once you realize that, you come to accept your ego belongs in the garbage can. So then you do nirankara with the full understanding, karta is nobody else except Brahman. That is the basic understanding which leads you to nirankara with smile on your face, because you come to realize it, not know, hear, but experience it. The real doer is nobody else except Brahman. And that completely takes away your ahankara out. That's why we can now reflect and say the presence of ego that each one of us has is a result of sheer ignorance as to who the doer is. Ego gains status because one, or I, do not take time to examine the reality as to who the real doer is. So aggrandizement of ego comes about purely due to lack of thinking on my part or any human being who has not gained the complete knowledge. Ahankara, ego, or manitva, pride, are closely related. Blessed with free will, I have the power to choose my action. Remember, we're talking about successful things. Yes, as a human being, when blessed with free will or power to act or not act, but I do not have power as to the outcomes of those actions. Karmani adhikara aste. Karmani eva adhikara aste. Ma paleshu kadachi. I don't have any control on the outcome of it because we really don't understand who the doer and enjoyer is, who's karta and bhokta. Because there are so many other factors which come into play when a successful thing, in the quotation mark, seems to happen. Well, some of you in the audience might be waiting to go and watch the football game later on. I am going to certainly go and watch the game. And when we're talking about a football game, and you can see, you can remember the last week's football game where he was able to make that miraculous clutch in the last couple of minutes before the end of the game. Everybody gave a credit to the receiver, Jefferson, and passer, Kirk Carlson. And then we're talking about the praise about their performance, but we don't take into consideration what other factors were playing to make that pass complete. The wind conditions, the condition of the ball, condition of the air atmosphere, condition of the player who was watching it, defending it, he catching it. There's so many variables at that time, which is not in the control of one single human being, but one single entity, which is controlling all these variable factors, is Brahman, God. So the karta is that. Once you recognize that, then ahankara, manitva automatically melts away. And when you have a full understanding of the subject, this pride and ego start appearing silly to you, and humility becomes a norm in your day-to-day activities, in your words, your actions, interactions. You recognize, you get a credit, but you smile and you know who the real person, the real entity who deserve it. And the last point on this particular verse is Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha Dosha, Anudarshanam. When you're repeating it over and over again, because these dukkha dosha is very common, goes over and over again. And darshanam is a beautiful word for seeing, knowing. So it is seeing the limitations of various things that happen in our life. So knowing the limitations in our life is an important value to understand and inculcate and react appropriately. For example, Janma Mrityu. Life begins at birth. But other side of the same coin is Mrityu. That means the death is certainty. Jatasya dhruva mrityu. That's what Shri Krishna says. Dhruvam janma mritasya. And life existence, we are all going through, is going to go through with certain life experiences. But this is the time to get the Atma Dhyan. So I'm very happy that we as a small group is getting together on a regular basis for the last several years. Well, I certainly can tell my personal experience that all systems in my body get old. Eyes get old, and I need cataract surgery, which I did. I hear less and less. So far, I've not had a hearing aids, but I have no shame of getting them if I need it. I got pain in bones and joints. Having lived 83 years, certainly have that, accept that. Muscle aches go on every time, but you accept it and move on. You know why it is hurting. Getting changes in my heart vessels, I can't see with my x-ray without the examination, but I know they're happening. So accepting the changes in your body is a common sense way of reacting to life. Know that you're old. You have limitations in all the activities you can do. You can cry over it and make yourself unhappy, or accept it and move on. And that's what I like to do. So Janma Mrityu, we talked about it. Jara is getting the old age, and Vyadhi. I mean, illnesses are going to be there in your life. That's part of human life. And having worked with children, both Kumud and myself, the disease occur in children even before they're born many times. And of course, all through their childhood, that disease is there. But we would both look at it in such a way that we are able to identify the challenges in early life, to treat them and cure them with their vyadhis. Just imagine treating a 1-year-old child who's going to live for 80 years. We've got 79 beautiful years for that human being. Whereas I treated a 81-year-old man and lived for 3 more years, I got only 3 years. So from that point of view, it was a pleasure for us to help the younger people so that we could see that the gain accomplished by hard work and God's grace was able to pass on the extra life of 80 good years in that particular human being. So this is going to be there. Whether you like it or not, dukkha is going to be there all the time. Whether there is a small pain in your skin when the mosquito bites in Minnesota, all of us know that, or a pain that is felt by a husband who loves his wife, like John has and I have, that pain is there, but one cannot avoid it. But how we handle that with a sense of gratification, that is the important thing for the human being. So you have to accept the fact, the pain, all form of pain, physical, mental, large, small, that is given. So jara, old age, vyadhi, the disease, and dukkha of all kinds is always going to be there. But how you deal with it, that is the way of education. And sometimes these negative experiences makes you a better human being, because having experienced it, you react appropriately, inappropriately. You behave properly and learn from it, improperly and not learn from it. So there are various ways of learning. The pain also is of 3 different kinds. The pain is adhyatmic, adhibhautik, and adidaivik. Adhyatmic, of course, is mind and intellect, internal pain and sufferings, conflict of limitations, the complexes that we develop, challenges because of ignorance, lack of knowledge, and most importantly, not having fully understood who you are and your relationship with Brahman. Those are adhyatmic problems at mind and intellect level. The equally problems, adi bhautik as well, the pain which comes around from the world all around me, like polluted air, noisy neighbors, barking dogs, people at workplace. But again, it is our reaction to that which gives us the pain, adi bhautik. And last but not the least, adi daivik, natural phenomena on which I don't have any control, like hurricanes, blizzards, earthquakes, tsunamis. That's part of the natural phenomena, which also are going to give it. Now, this particular verse, or this particular comment, is reminded by Lord Shri Krishna, is a negative message, but instead is a factual reminder. One needs to be objective. Lifespan is limited. If simply work, play, and sleep, you'll fulfill your life. You complete your life. You'll get old like me, but make sure they're able to spend that time in the worthwhile causes and achieve the ultimate goal of knowing who you are, getting the Atma Jnana. So you should be the master of our time and use that time properly. I remember a comment by a scholar who said, what needs to be done in this life? And he says, let me hear all that is worth before I go deaf. Let me hear all that is worth before I go deaf. Let me walk and reach the destination before I get crippled. Let me walk and reach the destination before I get crippled. Let me see all that is worth before I go blind. Let me see all that is worth before I go blind. Let me speak good words before I go dumb. Let me speak good words before I go dumb. Let me engage in the acts of charity before I get paralyzed. Let me engage in the act of charity before I get paralyzed. And most importantly, let me secure Atma Jnana before I go senile. I'll stop here.
Shashi, you
Yes.
mentioned very nicely about Atma Jnana, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. And for the participants, I want to pose a question. I will not answer it, but I want you to think about it.
Okay.
Atma Jnana absent, I'm suffering from great pain due to my sciatic nerve. Atma Jnana present, I'm still suffering great pain due to my sciatic nerve. So what does Atma Jnana do to me? Nothing.
You want me to comment on that?
Yeah.
The Atma Jnana tells me that we have the talent in the community which can take care about the physical problems. So that knowing fully to use the resources is also a part of personal growth. You understand the Atma Jnana is going to take care of your understanding to become reaching a certain level of spiritual understanding where you are comfortable and happy, but also does not prevent you from using the resources who can take care of your sciatica nerve either by medical treatment and or surgical treatment. So this is not something that a criticism of Atma Jnana, but you have common sense intelligence to use the facilities that are available there. So it's not a blame of Atma Jnana, but you have to use the common sense to use all the available faculties to take care of it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Good.
In other words, you see, I think many commentators make the matter more confusing by saying Atma Jnana is the only Jnana that you need. Knowing that, you don't have to know anything else. It doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
You have to separate the two.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're a good captain of the team, there are different players on your team. I mean, you have to use all the players on your team to make sure that all the goals are fulfilled. But again, when it comes to your personal growth, spiritual growth, to give you peace of mind, you're happy with yourself. Atmanya, Atmanatishta. For that, you need Atmanya.
I have a question. This is Arun.
Yeah, Arun.
How to avoid the fear of failure and adverse uncertainty? from crippling you from action and fully experiencing the life in this. It's like, say, go to a vacation, right? But I'm wondering, okay, if I book the ticket for this date, will this be snowstorm or something? And, will I be able to reach the airport, or when I come back, will I be stuck there? Things like that. So it's like, how do you avoid this fear? Because it's not in my control, right? The uncertainty is there. So how do I avoid it? And how does, this knowledge helps me?
A very, very, very good question. Only thing that as a human being we have in your hand is preparation, preparation, preparations. So you have prepared yourself with all the possibilities. And if you think you need half an hour to do it, trust me, you'll need 60 minutes to do it. So keep an extra time. Don't try to be last 2-minute quarterback. Make certain that you keep ample time, because sometimes you do not know how the time is taken away from unexpected circumstances. Prepare yourself, keep plenty of time, and stay positive. That's the way I would suggest. And again, positive in the sense that there's somebody with me all the time. There's no question about anybody bothering me. I don't know if I told you the story about here goes the story here. There was a mother who was a single mother, had a child, had to start to go to school, but the child has to walk from home to the school, which was across a big, thick forest. Okay. And she said, walk through that. And she tells him a Shraddha Purna word. Your brother lives in that forest. And when you're walking through that forest, call his name, he'll come and help you. She had Shraddha in God. What's the brother's name? His name, Mangu's name is Gopal. So he goes, and of course, halfway through the forest, he's scared. He says, Gopal. And sure, somebody comes in the dress of a little young teenager and takes him by hand and goes to the school. And again, he's looking forward to seeing him on the way home. And he takes care of him. So what I'm trying to say is, when you have that faith, you have that trust, that as long as I've done my best, the things will fall in proper place. At least my personal experience is the help has always appeared from the sources expected or unexpected. But for that you need, I mentioned, think positive, prepare well, give lots of time, you'll succeed. I won't tell you the whole story because it's a long story, but
thank you.
it was a very important story. But for that you need Shraddha and faith.
You were telling the meaning of 1 minute silence.
Well, I'm glad you reminded me of that. It is a much more deeper significance than we tend to use, because many times when the 1 minute of silence is there, people tend to look at their iPhones more often than maintaining their silence. Now, again, everything that I say always related to scriptures, so bear with me. This moment of silence represents a silent moment when we may perform silent contemplation, prayer, quiet reflection, or meditation. Usually it is held for a minute in honor of some individual who has recently died, especially the one that one admires. Then remember, since we are in the 13th chapter, I'll pull out from the 13th chapter. In the 14th verse of this chapter describes Brahman, the entity to be known in our human existence, Nyayam. He's described there as Sarvendriya Vivarjitam. That means it functions brilliantly. That means Sarva Indriya Vivarjitam. That means it functions brilliantly in the absence of all sense organs. That means that entity is able to function without the need of the organs In this case, for hearing. So you're able to hear even though the indriya is not there. For example, if you see in Kena Upanishad, is it kshetrasya kshotram? That means even though not heard by the ears, but by which the ears are able to hear it called. That is kshotrasya kshotram. So we're talking about the entity of Brahman, which requires no other qualities except Brahman. So if you say Ashabda Brahman is absolute silence. For example, I think it's from Mandukya Upanishad. We're talking about Mandukya Upanishad, there are 4 different states of human being. We are awake, most of us are this morning. Then we are in dream state, subconscious level. Then we are in deep state, where we are not awake, we're not dreaming anymore, and we are not even aware that we are asleep. That's the best time when refresh your brain. But in between those, if I ask you in the next day morning, did you sleep well, Bala? And he's going to say, I did sleep well. And I said, if you're fast asleep, how do you know you slept well? His answer is correct because there was some other entity which was watching on him when he was fast asleep. And that silence is called Turiya state, Chaturthi sthiti. That's why every birth of Lord Ganpati is also Chaturthi. The Chaturthi state is Turiya state. So that is the silence of all the silence. It's called Ashabda Brahman is Turiya. So in those particular moments of silence, what you are establishing yourself in that state of being awakeness, in that state, you're nothing but Brahman. So if you really want to recognize somebody, admire somebody, you cannot be listening to radio or TV, which is going on, getting impulses from outside, but you should be in that state, which is nothing but Brahman, the quietude, and that's the way to recognize and respect. So that moment of silence has significant spiritual connotations.
One of the questions, Dr. Sane, I have is the Kshama. Kshama is how many times you can let somebody go, that something happens, and how many times you can do it?
As many times as you need. As many times you need. Because if the thing is, it involves a persistent death of other people, and if you're in a position of authority, then it's your responsibility to deal with it. But if it affects only you, you don't have to fight with him, but that's taking the law in your own hand. So forgive him, move away from him, and let him go. Because trust me, that too is the job of God Almighty. That's a part of karma where it comes in, where the reaction will be taken care of. The problem arises when somebody is behaving inappropriately, you start reacting to it. And the guy who is totally not knowledgeable, he doesn't know he's hurting you. In that process, you are the one who is hurting yourself because of his inappropriate behavior. So you're not helping him, but hurting yourself. And that's the reason somebody has to forgive. And as I think Gita was talking last time, our relations are the most difficult one to deal with. They're the most challenging because the reason for that is ourselves, because we keep expectations from them. If you keep expectations whatsoever, then we get in trouble. Worst critic is yourself, your family members, friend circle. So most important thing is let it go. Read that section over and over again because that's one of the critical aspects here. But again, the thing is, I'm reminding you is, unless and until you are able to gain the Atma-dhyan in human life, you're missing the whole purpose of this existence, because even the devas, gods so-called, are unable to gain Atma-dhyan without being a human being. You have to have the faculty of independence, faculty of thinking, logical thinking, and acting. That you need that freedom. So that's why you had to be in the human form before they learn.
This is Bala. Just following up on today's discourse, how do you address the issue of attachment and talk about attachment to people, places, things? And that's kind of holds people together. And the judgment is just clouded because of the strong attachment.
Yeah, that's education, Bala. You're right. As we go along, you'll be able to see it because, as I mentioned to you, I'm just touching the opening couple of overs here with 20 verses out of 73 verses. 73 verses you're talking about. And I've just covered basically, just started the second verse out of 73.
Okay.
I mean, so you go to, I don't say that way because the first 6 verses basically introducing that topic, but the last verse had 9 qualities, and this verse that I just quickly concluded had 3 qualities. But again, this section of the 13th chapter is only 20 qualities, but the verses that I've selected are from 73 verses. If you go to the 12th chapter, the first is basically Evam satata yuktaye bhaktas tvam paripasate ye chapaksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittama. He's asking, Arjuna is asking Krishna, which is the better method, Akshara method or Saguna method? And then Shri Krishna opens up his bat and goes to 19 verses, all 34 verses of the 13th chapter, and first 20 verses of 20, all introduced by Sauti, because he put the Bhakti Marga as trying to glue, gorilla glue, if you will, between the Aham Brahmasmi. So basically, Tat Twamasi. So he's trying to put Tat and Twam together, and he's starting the glue Asi with these 73 verses, so called Amrutadhara. So just the beginning. So stay tuned, Bala. Trust me, you'll be surprised. It's
All right.
not that you don't feel, but what happens, Bala, is you'll be attached to everybody. Attachment will be not only with your daughter and granddaughter, but the attachment will be with everybody. You will be the same way, so that there will not be excessive feelings about one or the other person. You'll have the Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma attitude. You will have the same loving feeling towards all. And attachment, what happens is, Bala, you put a lot of expectations.
That's
and
true.
a lot of other complications arise out of it.
Yeah.
No, you're happy about good things that are happening, but then you should be happy with everybody in your friend circle to know it. And to me, friend circle is the entire world is your Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So that's the way we should be.
Yeah, Dr. Sane, I have a question
Yes.
for you. But before, I want to thank you for that beautiful write-up you sent us. So I read it a couple of times. I took an inventory of things personally, what I have, what I don't have.
Bala,
And-
you have.
But the thing is, we both talked about it, and then I said, yeah, some of the qualities we need to work on that. And before we get to that, if you are fortunate to receive that Atmajnana in this life, that will be great. Otherwise, that will hopefully follow us in the next life. That's the way I look at it, because you don't want to get yourself frustrated, like you said, because
No.
it needs to be a natural flow of things for us. And also, I see what Dr. Prasanna Kumar said about his suffering from that sciatic nerve. And I think as we all progress in age, we all go through certain things, like I have my own dealings with the diabetic, which is always there.
Good.
And then I look at the people who suffer more than I do with a terminal illness.
Mhm.
And I said, the good Lord has graced me with this. That's okay. Like you say, I have to take this as his prasad and and lead the best life that I can, productive life, rather than complain about it. I hope Prasanna gets that relief, and he can just live without pain. And that is the attitude I develop now, with this.
Absolutely.
But things
Anandi,
are going to happen as you progress in age. That is,
Prasanna doesn't have sciatica. I'm just pulled out an example. I'm perfectly healthy. I don't have any sciatic problem.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Oh, see, here I go.
Hey, look, Monday, he is cured. He was cured.
Cured. And as soon as I said, that's great. Yeah,
And you were asking the
I'm
question.
glad. Huh?
And
Yeah.
you were asking. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Ann.
So I'm wondering if you have a specific translation into English of the Bhagavad Gita that you recommend, because I have a couple, and I'm just wondering what you think.
I'll tell you simply as which I'll give you will be about 1,800 pages. So I won't bother about it. There are a lot of books. I got about one entire cabinet filled of books on Gita. And what happens is, as I mentioned to you, if you try to dig in several holes to find the water, your understanding will go only to a certain depth and you'll get frustrated. Whereas the Upanishads, every Upanishad is complete, but it's based upon the teacher who's teaching it. The teacher's style is different, and that creates problem. So use a different teacher after having read one book, then becomes challenge. The way I would suggest for you is, it doesn't matter what book you're reading it, read it in depth, and when you join the session, ask questions.
Okay.
Because you get an answer to your specific query rather than trying to learn on yourself. There are lots of books in the library, but the reason why you need a coach is because the coach can find out what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Because if you think that you don't have the qualities to reach the goal, the coach can see that potential and recharge you and make sure you accomplish it. And if you have a bad position of your arms, so you don't hurt your elbows or the shoulder for serving tennis, I'll tell you that particular motions will be changed to make sure that you don't get hurt. That's why you need a living teacher. Theoretical knowledge in book is not going to give you.
Okay,
So I'm sorry, I'm giving you honest
No.
answers.
that's fine. Thank you.
But don't hesitate to ask questions. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Dr. Sane,
Yes.
I have one question.
Sure.
So I see that, every one of us has a circle around us of, where we are responsible and liable. It's like if we are, say, US citizen, then we have responsibility to follow the laws of the US, not the laws of Saudi Arabia or somewhere, right? So, and our behavior within the circle and outside circle is different. It's like, if you are, say, US, you're in US, you follow US citizen, then you feel, okay, Russia, there is something opposite. So there is always a line around us, right? So and we have been teaching, we have to deal with everyone as the same, right? So we can't get rid of the circle. It expands and it contracts. It's like, within the family, it's like, okay, I have property, I'll try to pass to my family. I won't pass it to everyone just like that. So we can't really behave in terms of, universally that, okay, I'm a universal being, start feeling that, okay, I have read Gita, now I've become attached to everyone and deal with the same. I think it's a feel that is kind of impossible for me to behave like that in that way. So in every situation, there is a circle. And I see that, okay, it's like, when there was India historically, I mean, there is war between the kings. It was always there. But it was more like a jesting that, okay, you go around, I win, so he gets, the other guy loses. So, but there is no involvement or harm to the public. It's the war between the two armies, right? But people are not affected. They are not going after changing their religion or doing something, and then, but they were not able to see the big picture when there were attacks from outside, right? So there, the war is still really, really bad situation. It was no more a contest. So in terms of within the country, they can always use Shama, those kings. But when it came to outside, they forgot that they are not universal, they are outside. So when they practiced Shama, they lost badly and they got into trouble because, they win the war, they behave the same way that, okay, I win, you lose, you go away home, fine. But then this guy will come back and kill you next time, right? So you don't realize. So if we are not aware of that circle around us, then we get into trouble. I mean, I'm just trying to see, how far can be my universality? I mean, can the alien be part of my universe or not?
I think it was a good question, Arun. What you're referring to is a story of Prithviraj Chauhan and Muhammad Ghori, where he attacked him 6 times and lost war 5 times, pardoning him every time. And 6th time when he lost, he chopped his head off. But the point is, that's a part of values. At the same time, there's a limit to the values that you need to do. In this case, there was no other person who was supposed to make the decision. Chauhan was the king himself. So he had to take a decision, not based as a simple human being, but a head of the state who has been attacked 5 times before. So he had to take care of, like we talked about, the value of life, trumping the principle of non-violence. Like me, I taking out the inflamed appendix from your belly is not basically violating you, but yes, violating you because I want to save your life. So in that case, that is appropriate because since he was a king, he was the head of the law in that section. So yes, you're right. After giving 1 chance, if he still comes back and still attacks, the punishment is appropriately. He's no longer there to attack. So yes, I agree with you. This is going too far and sometimes creates a situation where the consequences are not good. So
not only, we can have our values, but then we have to be aware of the other person's value.
Right.
Because otherwise we'll be sitting as a deer in the headlights.
Yeah. At the same time, again, what I re-emphasize is if you are in charge of decision making, so you can't take the law in your hand. You have to let the law play its course. The reason I mentioned about this story is because he was the king of the kingdom, and his kingdom was attacked so many times, and he had defeated him every time, was still attacking. As a king, he was the head of the law, so he had to take care of it. I hope I'm making that point clear.
I have to kind of reflect on this.
Good.
But no, it was a great lecture. And the only thing I was thinking about is you only have control over the things that over the choices you make, right? We cannot make, right. We have no control over somebody else's choices. So it is, for me, that's the way I look at it. So it's easier to forgive somebody else because I cannot do anything about it. So why go into anxiety and all that things, right? And get upset about it. For me, I can only control myself. So I have to just work on myself. And basically, it's all about practice, right? Practicing all these values over and over. And I think that Bhagwan gives you all these challenges to really test you. How good are your values, right? Do you really? So it gives us a chance to practice those things. That's it.
Yep. You are basically getting you better.
Right.
Yeah, I will disagree with you because it depends upon your situation. You are not only in situations, sometimes you're not responsible just for you, that you live, you die, you get sick, you do this. You're responsible for others also. When you are leading, then you are not responsible for you, it affects others also. So then it's not just you, I make my choice and I'll be paying for it. It doesn't happen that way. Everyone else pays for you. I mean, our karma is interconnected. That's what my theory is. It's not that, I'll only suffer, or I'll get, heaven or hell. It's for other people also. So you have to make choices depending upon your circle. If your circle is you are free already. But if your circle is bigger, then you are not free to make your own choice. You have to make choice something which is good for everyone.
No, I agree with you, Arun. But that's what Dr. Sane was saying, right? That if you are in charge and you're a leader, then you have to make a little different decision because it does affect everybody. But if it is just you, I was just talking in terms of just me.
I'm glad I had a good discussion today. And if there are more questions, we'll meet next time, next Sunday.